everyone, and welcome to block 4 of our beautiful day block of the month mystery quilt along. Welcome, thanks for joining us here today. And as I said, today we're going to be working on our block 4, not really month 4, but block 4 of the beautiful day mystery, which is the grace block. Now, as we've done with other blocks, we are going to be making 4 grace blocks. You can choose the 4 centers of your choice. They do not have to be the ones that are matched here in this image, nor do the prints that you use have to match the combinations that are shown in the handout for the grace block. So it's completely up to you. Let's look at cutting. So just like with all the other previous months, the block cutting for A, B, C, and D are identical. The only thing that's changing is your background square, not really background, but your center square and the print that you're using. So you can see A through E is we're cutting out of our background fabric, the Bella Solid. The print fabric, we are cutting out blocks F and G, and then we will be using one of the 8.5 inch squares of our panel, print of your choice, for the center of each square. Okay, let's take a look at our blocks. So here is just visual of the blocks and combination of fabrics that we used for our blocks here today. Let's get started. We're going to be using the 1/4 inch seam, neutral colored thread of your choice for today. We're going to be starting with a center panel unit. You are going to need pieces A and B first out of our fabric. Okay, so let me find it here. A is the 8.5 inch rectangle of our background fabric, and B is the 12.5. Okay, we are going to be sewing the 2 8.5 inch rectangles to our center square opposite sides. So we're going to put them right sides together. We're going to sew 1/4 inch, and then we will open them up, and then we will use the 12.5 to attach to the opposite side. We are going to basically be framing or putting a border around the panel. So you can see in step 1 of our instructions, we're attaching A and then we're attaching B. This unit should measure a 12.5 inch square once you have basically this background border attached to our block. So let's go on over to our machine here. We're going to attach the background rectangles, the 2.5 by 8.5 inch A's, to 2 opposite sides of my unit. I would go ahead and I would be chain piecing this, so I would do this step for all 4 center units. I have already assembled 3 of the other blocks, so I'm only going to be sewing 1 here with you today. Okay. Go to the other side. When we go to press this seam, we're going to press this seam away from center. There we go. We have block border A attached to, or rectangles A attached here to our unit. So I'm going to go ahead and set my seams. I'm going to fold back and press the seam away from center. And now we're going to return to the machine and we're going to attach the 12.5-inch rectangle to the other opposite side of the center unit. You can pin if you like. I don't typically pin this shorter length, but it's completely up to you. Just sew down to where my hand is at. And then I pause to resituate the next section. Now, you can, since I'm not chain piecing, I'm going to use a little leader and ender here. I have these little tiny corner triangles that are going to be cut off of this project here in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and use those as a leader and an ender. They're not needed for this particular project, but these will just be a pile of little half square triangles that I add to my stack for one day when I run out of things to sew. I'll have some already sewn half square triangles. Now that, cut this off. That one's now sewn and I can throw it in the pile. I'm gonna go ahead and use my iron again to set my seam. And flip over and back. Now that this unit is sewn, once you have the borders on all your center units, you can set these to the side. We will come back to these in just a moment. The next step that we need to do is we want to get square F. Okay, so square F in our project is the 4.5-inch square. Okay, that is out of the print. We are going to draw a line from one corner to the other on the wrong side of all of the 4.5-inch squares for these blocks. Okay. Once the lines are drawn, you can pull your pieced unit back up, and we're going to place these in the corner. Okay. We want to put them in the corner so the diagonal line goes not from corner to the center of the block. This is wrong. We want it to go from edge of the block to edge of the block. We've aligned up the raw edge here on these two sides. And we're going to do the same. So you're going to do this in all four corners. We are going to return to the machine and we are going to sew on that line. Okay, Note, sew on the line. We're not sewing 1/4 of an inch away from the line. We are sewing on the line. Now, depending upon how big of a line or how big of a marker that you used, you may question, well, where exactly on the line do I want to be? For me, because I want to make sure that once I've sewn this, that this triangle folds back and meets at that corner, I'm actually going to sew just to the inside of this line. So I'm not going to sew right on the line. I'm going to just sew 1 thread over from that line. Okay, so especially if you marked with a really, heavy hand or a bigger tipped marker, our goal is to ultimately really go exactly from corner to corner. And if you're going to be a little shy, you're better off to be shy in the corner of what we're going to trim off. Okay, there's that. Get my little leader and ender. Rotate corners. And you're going to repeat this step with all 4 corners. So we're in block 4. How's everybody doing? How is your piecing going? Are you struggling with a particular step of this project? Is there something that you would like for me to show you or discuss with you in a future live? Because I'll be happy to do that. Okay, this is our last corner. Here. Now that you can see, I'm just like 1 thread over from that line. Okay, we are going to trim 1/4 of an inch from that line. Okay, so I forgot one. I'm just going to take my 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to lay it right on top of the marked line that I marked, and I'm going to cut these little triangles. You could save for a leader and an ender. I'm not sure I'll use the background of this for a leader and an ender because it will have a seam in it, but I may save the print triangles and I will intermix them together, so with the other ones I cut off the other blocks, so that we can have maybe some different colored triangles, that they're not all background to print. Now, like I said, our goal with this technique is that when we do flip this back, that it's going to meet basically the edge of the white background. This square should be a 12.5 inch square still once we've sewn this and pressed it, because all we've done is replaced the background corner with this corner. Okay, and so before you trim, if you want to fold this back and verify that that matches your white background, then if it doesn't, you can unsew it and fix it before you trim it off. Okay, I'm gonna press my corner, set my seam, and then press my corner away from the center. Okay. Here is our new center square. Now we're going to take this, set this to the side, and we're going to make some flying geese units. So we're going to grab our background squares. So we have these 2.5-inch squares of background, and we have these 2 by 4.5-inch rectangles of our print fabric. So here we go. Background, 2.5-inch square, rectangle, 4.5 each print. You're going to draw a line from one corner to the other on your background squares. Okay. What we're going to do is we are going to sew. Let's get this so you can see it. We're going to position a background square right sides together with the print fabric. Diagonal line should be in one corner or the other. Okay. And again, we are going to sew on this line. Okay. So right sides together, diagonal line. Now we're going to travel on over here to the machine, and we are going to sew on the line. Again, just like the other one, I'm sewing just a tad bit to the outside of the line. Okay. So, there we go. We are attached. We are going to take that and we are going to again trim a 1/4 inch away from the line that we marked. These are all those leader and ender triangles. Now, in the paperwork, they suggest pressing the seam towards the white. Now, I'm actually going to suggest that we press the seams open. And the reason for this is that when we go to assemble this project, we do have a pretty bulky meeting point here where this intersects with that triangle or the fold over corner that we just added to our main block. It could be a little bulky. So I suggest, you can try it if you like, but I would suggest pressing this open just to give you a little less bulk and maybe get a better point or a section of your block that will lay just a little flatter. And I'll show you here in 1 second. So where this unit Here's this unit and this unit come together. I opted to press this open because this unit is pressed towards this and this unit would be pressed towards the background. And when we put that together, that makes this like 6 layers stacked on top of each other. So we find that if you press this one open, it will lay a little less bulky at that point. Okay. So now that that is attached, we're going to take the other background. It should lay in the corner so that the line that you drew starts at the previous background square and to the opposite corner. We do not want to do corner of fabric away. We actually want to make sure that our line is traveling across the previously sewn seam. And we're going to do that with all 4 units. And then we're going to turn to the sewing machine and we're going to sew on the line just like we have done previously. And then we'll come back, trim, and press open. Trim these 1/4 of an inch away from the line that we drew. And then we're going to go press these seams open. Now these units, once you have sewn them, these units should measure 2.5 by 4.5. Okay, so if they are smaller than that, you may want to remake the unit. If they are bigger, you are going to want to trim that unit down. And we've talked about flying geese units in previous months. We used the wing clipper to trim if you made the unit bigger. The key thing to remember is when you trim the unit that you leave 1/4 of an inch from that point to the top edge of the block. Okay, because if you trim this seam here to be less than 1/4, you're going to lose a point when you go to sew your block together. Okay, we have, let's press that, 4 flying geese units that are 4.5 by 2.5. 2 of them are going to get the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. And 2 of them are going to get the 2.5 by 6.5 1/2-inch rectangles. Okay, so we are going to be assembling basically a border unit. Just so you can see here, we'll start with rectangle D. So we're going to take a flying geese unit and we're going to attach the 2D background rectangles. That is the 2.5 by 4.5, and then we're going to press the seam away from center, and then we're going to sew those units to the side of our new center unit. Okay. So I have my flying geese. I have a 2.5 by 4.5. I'm going to line up my edges and I'm going to sew. Do the other one. Get my units, and we're going to attach the other 2.5 by 4.5 to the opposite side of that one. We're going to press this so that the seam goes towards the background. So you want to lay that on your ironing board with the background rectangle up, set your seam, and then press away. Set and press away. Okay. We're going to get back our center unit and we're going to sew these to opposite sides. The key here is the flying geese print needs to be touching the center square, not this direction. We want it to be this direction. We are going, this unit should be at 12.5 inches in length. We're going to put them right sides together. We're going to match. There's no real matching point that's happening at this point. You can, if you want to make sure that it's kind of centered, you can mark the center of the block and then mark the center of your border piece, and then you can align center. And then you can match your ends. And that way, if it's not exactly 100% the right length, you can get everything aligned the appropriate way, or just right sides together, pin and sew. Okay, we're going to I'll tell you that on the previous blocks that we made for this, the other Grace blocks, we really didn't match or worry too much about that intersection. You know, I was pretty happy with the way things kind of landed each time. That from a galloping horse, I'm leaving it alone. I'm not stressing over it. We're going to return to the machine. We're going to sew these with 1/4 inch, and then we're going to come back and press the seam away from center. There we are attached. Give that a set. Press up and away from center. I'm pretty happy with that there. Okay, pretty happy with that one. Now we're going to repeat this process with the other flying geese unit and with background rectangles E. Okay, so these are the 6.5 inches that we have there. So we're going to sew one to each side of that unit. Side on. So the other rectangle to the other side of the flying geese. We will return to the iron. And we're going to press that seam away from the center flying geese as well. Okay, so we're going to put the background rectangle on top, set the seam, press away from center. Okay, there is our last unit. We're going to take our center unit. We're now going to attach these pieces to those sides that we haven't sewn to yet. Again, you can match centers if you like, or you can just go for it. I'm just going to match my ends. Go ahead and pin the opposite side. Okay, back to the machine. Sew 1/4 inch for our final 2 seams. This is the only seam that I backstitch. When I am piecing, I do not backstitch with the exception of the final seam of the block. And the reason for that, all the other seams are going to get sewn over and reinforced, so they don't really need backstitching. And you know, again, backstitching creates bulk in the seam, so it can affect your 1/4 inch. So I only backstitch the last row or border that goes on a block. The same when I'm putting a quilt together. The only seam I back stitch is the last border that I put on. And the seam we're also going to set and press away from center. All right, there is our unit. Again, this block should measure 16.5 inches by 16.5 inches once it's finished. And you're gonna make 4 of them in center and color combinations of your choice. Okay, and there it is. There is the 4 Grace units that we have for this month's project. Well, how did it go? Any questions? Anything like that? Please feel free to drop anything in the chat box, in the comment section, or feel free to reach out to us if you're having an issue with getting your blocks to turn out, or have a question about anything that I talked about today. And I will see you here next month for the next portion of our Beautiful Day Mystery. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a great rest of the month. We'll see you soon.